Hey folks, if you're looking for an in-depth review, you're in the right place. And for today's title, I'll be talking shop about Goblins Who Chop, specifically David Syzmanski's bite-sized boomer shooter, Chop Goblins. But was this goblin-infested game a hobbled experience, or was it a short but sweet treat? I'm your host Arlyeon, let's find out together. It sounded like a fun idea at the time. Break into a museum, have a look around, maybe play with the exhibits a little and have a few laughs, only it didn't quite stop there, did it? No, your grubby little mitts had to open that unassuming little box, which had served as the ancient prison of the Chop Goblins. This little morsel and others beside are told to you at the start of each stage, ultimately providing you a set of short but funny excuses for why it's entirely reasonable to jam a dagger between the eyes of every single goblin you meet. And why you suddenly found yourself lost in the hallways of a Transylvanian castle, or in the midst of a goblinoid empire. It's weird stuff. But not everything on that screen is just for laughs, since there's also a small segment that essentially serves as a bestiary of sorts, providing both flavor and a small hint as to what you can expect from whatever new baddie is being introduced in a given stage. All in all, while it's not a narratively dense experience, the stuff that's there is a good bit of fun, especially when you come across the bits of mischief that are happening in the midst of the stage. Thank God that these things at least don't multiply in water. Then again, they don't exactly need to, since there's enough to populate a set of 5 digestible stages, so let's talk shop about the Chop's mechanics. On my end, the first thing I noticed was the mobility, because it's extremely straightforward given there's no crouching, running, or jumping. Instead, you move at a steady, albeit quick pace, which still enables kiting, especially with the smart use of the level as cover. There's also no fall damage, which helps a bit insofar as your mobility options and even for accessing certain bits of the level. All in all, it was fairly nice and readily grasped, which meant it wasn't too long before I started to focus on the nuances of the arsenal instead. And the basics are here too, since you have to focus less on reloading your weapons and more on ensuring that you keep an eye on your ammo so that you can ensure you have all of your arsenal at your disposal for different situations. That said, even with its relatively narrow selection of 5 weapons, there's some tactical considerations to make. For one thing, despite being a melee weapon, your knife has a superbly useful ability to reflect range attacks if you time it right, which is a great defensive tool to protect your health pool, especially since it pops out quickly and can be used while reloading another weapon. What's more, while your basic flintlock pistol does have a reload animation built into its use, there's nothing actually preventing you from quick swapping to a well-timed stab or a different weapon, which can help promote some shooty shenanigans. Simply put, combat felt good even when I had a limited set of tools at my disposal, and this was complemented by the overall stage design. See, while Chop Goblins is relatively small in scope, the game is actually constructed in such a way that you can tackle it in a few ways. In some circumstances, I mean this rather literally, given there's alternate pathways and side segments that are wholly optional to go and peruse, including some fun secrets which eschew mashing a use key against the wall in favor of more logical mechanisms. And these are all rewarding too, since they can provide you access to weapons earlier than you should acquire them, upgrades which can change how weapons work, like the knife upgrade that ramps its damage considerably, or even a shortcut to the ending of a level. That said, the game also provides support for different playstyles, given there's a scoreboard to compete on. Though, getting a high score relies on a player's ability to chain together as many goblin kills as possible consecutively while avoiding being hit and without the combo timing out. It's honestly an interesting system because while the timer can be refreshed by acquiring the chop coins scattered throughout the level, which also provide points, the player is still forced to speed along as efficiently as possible without being able to rely on prolonged cover shooting or sidetracking for much needed ammo and health if things go horribly wrong. Something which is then further compounded by the fact that there are no checkpoints or mid-level saves. If you screw the pooch and die, you are back to the start of a given stage. But again, given the overall length of these levels, this works quite well. On my end, I tackled my initial playthrough on Fiend difficulty, and although I died a few times, it ultimately felt challenging but fair, especially given the resources tucked away in the various areas. That said, if you're looking for a challenge, Goblin mode will certainly deliver, as not only do the enemies hit substantially harder, there's more of them waiting to murder you. Even with the New Game Plus mode, I still found myself getting taken off guard. And that's despite the fact that Chopped Goblins has a relatively simple enemy roster, given that it only really introduces one new enemy type with each stage. In any case, that's all I have to say about the gameplay, so let's move on to the graphics, and honestly, as simple as they are, I certainly found them charming. Just a whole lot of goofy fun throughout the whole experience insofar as the enemy design. The stages are also a good bit of fun, with a wide gamut of themes helping to set them apart from each other, which is probably part of the reason why there's a sightseeing mode that allows you to explore them enemy-free. That said, as deadly as the goblins are, I actually found them pretty charming to hang around. I mean, yes, they're rushing forward with knives, but the joyful glee in their giggles and their earnest, "Nice to see you!" before they slide a shiv between your ribs just really helps to sell how fucking hilarious this game is. Also, the fact that there's a boss that sings while he's trying to kill you. It's great. And it doesn't just stop there either. Like, the moment I heard the opening theme boot up, I figured I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting myself into, and I was right. Because there's a legitimately fun, varied, and just upbeat soundtrack to listen to alongside all of these stages. That said, when all said and done, I have absolutely no regrets. Chopped Goblins might not be a particularly lengthy endeavor. I clocked in about an hour before I beat it on my first playthrough. That said, it wasn't long before I tackled another in New Game Plus, poring over the earlier levels I'd ambled through, discovering all sorts of odds and ends that I'd missed the first time around. I was floored to discover 2 extra weapons in that initial museum stage, and a small abundance of extra coins and enemies to butcher, and an alternate route forward towards the end of the stage. It's just such a legitimately fun time. Like, yes, okay, the game does end on a little bit of an anticlimax, but honestly, I don't actually care at all. That said, I do owe someone an apology at this time, namely the dev, because instead of solving the grease puzzle like I was supposed to, I brute forced the combination lock. Most because I was too lazy to backtrack at that point and look around for symbols, and instead decided that cycling through 216 combinations didn't feel like it was a big deal, especially compared to the 10,000 I did in a different title. Yay! Anyways, what I'm trying to say is, I honestly and wholeheartedly recommend Chopped Goblins. It's just simple, good fun, and a solid hit that legitimately has me hoping that Dave does, in fact, release a bit more content for it. Anywho, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And if you enjoy my efforts to create new indie reviews, interviews, and gaming content, hit the subscribe button and the bell. For the Discord savvy folks, there's a link to my community, the Crit Hit Cauldron, in the video description, and to my Patreon so you can support me and the other members of Crit Hit. Also to my Twitch if you want to see me get dunked on in indie games live. That said, I'll catch y'all in the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.